Look around your classroom right now. Think about the English language in your textbook, the coins you use to buy lunch, or even the Bible and the Quran. These are everyday items we rarely question. But none of these things actually started inside indigenous African kingdoms. They were brought here from across the ocean. For centuries, the massive wealth, natural resources, and strategic location of the African continent attracted different groups of outsiders. When these groups arrived, they altered local cultures and systems of government, a process we call foreign influence. To understand exactly who we are today in modern Uganda, we have to trace the footprints of these foreign groups and see exactly how they reshaped the continent. Before European colonies existed, Arab, Persian, and Indian traders sailed hundreds of wooden ships to East Africa, primarily to trade for gold and ivory. When they traded with local communities, they exchanged manufactured goods like mirrors and glass beads. Over time, this daily interaction led to the spread of Islam and helped create the Swahili language. Soon after, European explorers arrived. Their main goal was to map out the interior rivers and locate raw materials for industries back home. Moving inland was intensely difficult. These explorers faced hostile terrain and were constantly slowed down by tiny insects carrying deadly tropical diseases like malaria. Following the explorers came Christian missionaries. They built modern hospitals and taught reading and writing in formal schools, while simultaneously discouraging traditional African religious beliefs. By mapping the rivers and building the first trading posts, these early groups created clear paths into the interior. Without intending to, they made it easier for the next wave of arrivals to extract resources on a massive scale. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, European traders established a highly commercialized and devastating system across the Atlantic Ocean. Look at this Atlantic trade map. First, European ships brought factory goods to West Africa. In Stage 2, the Middle Passage, African people were forced across the ocean as slaves. Finally, enslaved people harvested raw materials, which were shipped back to Europe to supply factories. This continuous loop removed millions of people from the continent. It fueled destructive tribal wars to capture prisoners and caused local African economies to completely collapse. By the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was booming. European factories were filled with heavy machinery, and they desperately needed raw materials like rubber and palm oil to keep running. To secure these materials, European powers began a rushed, highly competitive race to claim pieces of the African continent. This race became known as the Scramble for Africa. In 1884, European nations met at the Berlin Conference to divide up the land and avoid fighting each other. As you can see, there were 0 African leaders present to speak for their own territories. To actually acquire the land, colonial administrators often used deceptive treaties. They offered small gifts or promises of protection to illiterate kings, tricking them into signing away their land rights. When local leaders resisted, colonialists used overwhelming military force, bringing in advanced weapons like the Maxim gun to crush opposition. This map shows the final result, the partition of Africa. European powers erased ancient, natural tribal boundaries and locked the entire continent into rigid, artificial colonies. Once the land was acquired, these foreign nations needed a way to control the local populations and extract the wealth. This chart shows the 3 main systems. The British preferred indirect rule, keeping African chiefs in power simply to collect taxes. Germany and Belgium used direct rule, installing strict foreign officials to enforce laws. The French used assimilation, forcing locals to drop their native customs to become entirely French. These sudden rules pushed many communities to their breaking point. In South Africa, strict British laws forced thousands of Dutch-descended farmers, called Boers, to migrate north in a massive movement known as the Great Trek. Whether it was through indirect taxes, direct force, or erasing a culture, the final result was exactly the same. Africans completely lost their political independence. The era of foreign rule left permanent marks on the continent. Using intense physical labor, colonialists physically transformed the land by laying down modern railways and roads to move resources. They also introduced formal classroom literacy and modern medicine and global cash crops that are still farmed today, like coffee and tea. But those additions came at a massive cost. The continent suffered extreme resource exploitation. Local cultures were distorted, and unified clans were divided by artificial borders that still cause conflict right now. So look again at the language you read, the coins in your pocket, and the borders of your country. They are direct results of this long history. By understanding exactly how these footprints were left behind, we can better protect our independence and work together to build a self-sustaining future.